All right, so what exactly has this Israel-Iran 12-day war achieved? Of course, America joining in and obliterating Iran's nuclear facilities. Has Iran's ability to develop a nuclear weapon been pushed back by a few months or years, or has it been permanently damaged? To try and assess the longer-term fallout of this 12-day war, it in a sense is a culmination of this 20-month military campaign that Israel's waged, first against Hamas, then against Hezbollah, the Houthis, and of course, finally, at the root cause of all of it, which, as Israel describes, is the evil Ayatollah regime in Iran. To try and assess this, I'm now joined by a very, very special guest. He's one of the most authoritative pro-Israel voices anywhere in the world. Mr. Douglas Murray is a British historian and author, and his latest book on democracies and death cults, Israel and the Future of Civilization, takes a very long, hard look at what has happened post-October 7, 2023, when Hamas launched that attack on Israeli citizens. Thank you very much, Mr. Murray, for speaking with us here on CNN News 18 and for this interview. So first things first, this 12-day long war between Israel and Iran, Israel started it, and then America joined in the last couple of days. America, as President Trump claims, obliterated Iran's nuclear program or its ability to develop a nuclear weapon. What is your assessment of these last 10 or 12 days? How do you see these developments as an observer? What has this military operation, this war, this 12-day war, as President Trump describes it, what has it actually achieved?
Well, you mentioned earlier that this is something that the Israeli government has talked about for many years. It's actually decades now that Israel and indeed much of the world, including the international community, has warned about the Iranian revolutionary government trying to get hold of nuclear weapons. And it's been the view of many countries, I would say most countries in the international community, that if the revolutionary government in Iran were to get possession of the world's most lethal weaponry, it would do two things. One is that it would put the world's most dangerous weapons into the hands of one of the world's most dangerous governments, one that has terrorist armies all across the Middle East and indeed cells across much of the world. And secondly, that it would lead to nuclear proliferation in the Middle East of a kind that would be absolutely impossible to live with for the Middle East or the wider region. So for decades, people have warned about this. To me, one of the most interesting things about whatever history we'll call this, it might be the post-October 7th war, it might be the war of 1979 to 25, from the moment that the Ayatollah Khamenei took over, seized power in Iran, or it might be the 12-day war, as President Trump has been calling it. Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing about what has happened in recent days is that so many world leaders and so many countries have seen that what Israel and America toward the end of this campaign have achieved is exactly what so many other countries wanted, by one way or the other. One of the most interesting comments of the past week was from the German Chancellor Merz, who said, before America joined in the bombing, said, Israel is doing the world's dirty work for us. And what he meant by that was, as he said, the government in Tehran that has governed, or rather misgoverned, Iran since 1979, is one of the most dangerous governments in the world, sponsors terrorism around the world, and that the world knew that the mullahs, the Ayatollah, getting an Iranian nuclear bomb was incredibly undesirable. Yet what did most of the world do to prevent it? And the answer is they were taken through endless rotations of diplomacy, all the time during which the Iranians strung out the negotiations and advanced their nuclear program. And the world knew that at some point, the country most threatened, most overtly, explicitly threatened from Tehran, Israel, was going to have to act as the country nearest the boat, as the country first in the eyes of the Ayatollahs. And that's what Israel did. And as I've said for many years, what has rolled out is exactly what we expected to roll out, which is the same governments that said we will never allow Iran to get the bomb were in the end unwilling to do very much. And when Israel and then America actually did do the thing needed to stop Iran getting the bomb, many of those same countries inevitably had some kind of criticism of the action or called for de-escalation and much more. But essentially what Israel has done, with American backing towards the end, is what had to be done to stop the Ayatollahs getting the bomb and to stop nuclear weaponry spreading across the Middle East region.
So now the question of, what the long-term impact is of the action taken by Israel, and then, like you said, in the final couple of days, the United States joined in. So the experts are divided on this. I guess the jury is still out on the true extent of the damage to Iran's nuclear program. What is your assessment? How far back has Iran's ability to enrich uranium to weapons grade or to develop a nuclear weapon, how far back has that been pushed? Has it been sort of permanently depleted with these strikes, or has it just been pushed back by a few months or years? What's your
Well, you mentioned that experts are divided on it. I would slightly push back on that. The experts don't know. It is the truth of it. Nobody yet knows exactly the extent of the damage. I'd be surprised. There are reports that have been minimizing the amount of damage caused, particularly by the American strikes. I've read people claiming that the Iranian nuclear program has merely been set back weeks or months. By the way, the same people tending to make that claim are the same people who, until a couple of weeks ago, were claiming that the Iranian Revolutionary Government wasn't seeking nuclear weaponry. But I'd be surprised if it was merely set back a bit. The damage done to all of the nuclear sites hit is significant. The damage to Fordow, in particular, is reportedly extensive, if not complete. President Trump is saying that it's complete. We'll see. I would have thought there will still be something left in the program, but whether or not that's anything like enough for the Iranians to restart the program, even if they decide to, is a question we just don't know yet. Mm-hmm. But yes, I would have thought much of this is face-saving attempts by Tehran, which massively misstepped. It misstepped in a set of ways. One has been by, as I've often said, by colonizing the Middle East for the last 45, 46 years, by taking over with its terrorist proxies, not just Gaza, but Lebanon, Yemen, much of Iraq, much of Syria in recent years, acting as the colonizing power across the region, sponsoring terror, sponsoring the October 7th attacks and causing the war that has resulted. And then again misstepping by thinking that if they kept stringing out negotiations and seeking nuclear weaponry, the whole world would act as it has acted to date. And would sluggishly keep going back to the negotiating table in Geneva and so on, allowing the mullahs to play for time but not acting. And they seem not to have taken into account that President Trump acts differently from many other world leaders, as you and your viewers will have noticed, and that when he promised his voters that he would prevent Iran ever getting a nuclear bomb, he meant it.
So the question now is, what happens now? There is a ceasefire, which President Trump has announced. Both parties have agreed to it. Yes, both parties did indulge in some amount of firing even after the announcement of that ceasefire. It is a fragile one. It's a tenuous one, but it's holding. And that's the important detail, the fact that the ceasefire is holding. What happens now to the dynamic of the Middle East? What happens to Israel-Iran equations? What happens to what you just described? If Iran has been the biggest colonizing power in the Middle East for the last 40, 45 years and used its proxies like Hamas and Houthis and Hezbollah, do they just give up on that playbook? Or have these actors, these non-state actors, these terror proxies, have they been weakened to such a position in Israel's campaign post-October 7, 2023, that the old playbook cannot be sustained anymore?
It's a little early to say. The regime in Tehran has certainly had not just extensive power in the Middle East region, but of course has a lot of terrorist cells and elsewhere around the world. It might be a time when the Ayatollah decides to ignite some of them and to set some of them off. That also, of course, would be a catastrophic mistake if such attacks were in any way traced back to him. But it's possible he'll do something through a relatively unconventional means, through softer targets than we've seen in recent weeks. If the Ayatollah is seen to be breaking the ceasefire, I would have thought that would be extremely bad for him, both in terms of his own position in the country, where he is teetering as we speak. He's about the only senior membership of the regime still going. And that really was that he's reportedly was taken off the target list on the orders of President Trump, who thought that, maybe correctly, that killing the Ayatollah would effectively lead to what would be perceived as regime change in Iran, which is something that President Trump has said he's not interested in. But the flip side of that, of whether or not this fragile ceasefire holds, is whether Israel is able to effectively not act, even if it believes it needs to, because of the imperative of the US president, which is, I've made a ceasefire. I mean, it's the same thing that he did with India, Pakistan recently, but on a different scale. But, is that President Trump said, I've done the ceasefire. Nobody, people better make sure that they don't do anything to break the ceasefire. Israel has a tricky corner in a way here, because President Trump will want the ceasefire to hold, so that he can claim, rightly or wrongly, that he's done what he needed to do, and now there will be peace. Mm-hmm. Or maybe they'll be pushed again in different ways by the Ayatollah. But the degradation of the Iranian terrorist proxies across the region is astonishing. I mean, Hezbollah was acting as a quasi-government in Lebanon until the last year or so, and it has been so destroyed that its capabilities have been subdued, not to nothing, but to an extent that their power in Lebanon, for instance, their ability to fire rockets into their neighbors from there is massively diminished. If Iran's terrorist regime and colonizing power across the Middle East has been as significantly damaged as I think it has, it presents an enormous opportunity for a different kind of peace and a different kind of future across the Middle East. There is no reason for the Houthi forces in Yemen to be firing ballistic missiles into Israel from many miles away and causing retaliatory strikes by the Israeli Air Force. There is no reason for that to be happening were Iran not handing ballistic missiles to the Houthi terrorists in Yemen. So if the missiles stop coming and the firing stops, every country in the region has the opportunity for a better future.